Los Angeles rarely slowed down. Even when it rained, the city kept moving, cars slicing through wet streets, neon lights bleeding into puddles, people rushing past each other without ever really seeing one another. Jansok Park sat behind the wheel of his black sedan, stopped at a red light on Melrose Avenue. His hands rested steadily on the steering wheel, his posture perfect, his face unreadable. At 34, he was everything the city admired: successful, respected, untouchable. A Korean immigrant who had built his life from discipline alone. Award-winning architect. Luxury buildings. A name people trusted. But inside, there was nothing loud. No excitement. No warmth. Just silence. The rain tapped against his windshield as if trying to wake him up. He didn't notice. His mind was elsewhere, where it always was, locked behind walls he had built years ago, after learning the hard way that feelings were liabilities. Then something made his foot hesitate on the gas. Across the street, beneath the flickering street lamp, a small outdoor gallery had been set up along the sidewalk. Framed photographs leaned against a temporary stand, protected by a thin plastic cover. Most were ordinary city skylines, crowded streets, blurred motion. But one photograph froze him completely. It showed a man standing alone in the rain. Not facing the camera. Head slightly lowered. Hands in his pockets. Surrounded by light but untouched by it. Lonely in a way that couldn't be acted. Jansok's chest tightened. Because the man in the photograph was him. The light turned green. Horns blared behind him. He didn't move. Without fully understanding why, he pulled over. Amara adjusted the strap of her camera bag as she watched people pass by. Most didn't stop. They never did. Los Angeles loved art, but only when it was packaged and priced inside galleries with white walls and wine glasses. She didn't mind. She wasn't here for fame. She was here for moments. Amara had learned early that pain was universal, even if languages were not. As an African woman living in the US, she had learned to observe more than speak, to listen with her eyes, to feel before judging. That was why she took photographs of people when they thought no one was watching. That was why the lonely ones always found her lens. She was adjusting a frame when she felt that someone standing too still, too close. She looked up. The man in front of her was tall, sharply dressed, his coat darkened by rain. His face was calm, but his eyes looked like they were holding back an entire lifetime. He didn't say hello. He didn't ask a question. He just stared at one photograph. That one. She asked gently. Her voice startled him. He nodded once. How much? He asked. His English was fluent, clean, American, but with something restrained underneath. She told him the price. He didn't negotiate. He took out his card, paid, and carefully lifted the frame as if it might break if handled carelessly. As she handed it to him, her fingers brushed his. It was brief. But something passed between them, something unspoken, heavy, familiar. You took this, he said, finally looking at her. Yes, why? Amara hesitated. Then she answered honestly. Because some people are loud about their pain, she said. And some people carry it so quietly that no one ever notices. His grip tightened on the frame. He nodded once more, then turned to leave. But before he walked away, she said, You look like him. He stopped. Slowly, he turned back. For what it's worth, she added, not knowing why she felt compelled to say it, you don't look empty. You just look tired. For the first time in years, Jansok didn't have a response. He walked away with the photograph pressed against his chest like something stolen. That night, Jansok placed the photograph against the wall of his minimalistic apartment. The space was clean, modern, expensive and lightless. The photograph didn't belong there. It was too real. He poured himself a drink and sat across from it, staring. The man in the picture didn't move, didn't speak, but somehow accused him of something he couldn't name. He slept poorly. Dreamed of rain. The next morning, he found himself standing in line at a small cafe he had never noticed before. It was quiet, tucked between a bookstore and a nail salon. And behind the counter, her. Amara. She looked different in daylight. Softer. Brighter. Her hair was pulled back, her sleeves rolled up, her smile easy but not forced. She recognized him instantly. The photograph guy, she said. He almost smiled. Coffee? She asked. Yes, he replied, then paused. Whatever you recommend. She raised an eyebrow. That's dangerous. I live dangerously, he said, dryly. She laughed and the sound unsettled him more than he expected. As she handed him his cup, their eyes met again. There was no flirtation. No performance. Just recognition. Two strangers standing at the edge of something neither of them understood. He took a sip. It was good. He stayed longer than necessary. So did she. And neither of them realized that this ordinary morning was the first crack in a life that had been sealed shut for years. If you're enjoying this story, please like the video, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Jansop did not return to the cafe the next day. Or the day after. He told himself it was coincidence, routine, logic. He had meetings, site visits, deadlines that stacked neatly into excuses. His life had always run on structure, predictable, controlled, efficient. Yet every morning, as he passed cafes closer to his office, he felt an irrational pull toward the one he claimed didn't matter. On the fourth day, he gave in. The bell above the cafe door rang softly as he stepped inside. The smell of coffee and cinnamon wrapped around him, warm and unthreatening. The place was half full, students with laptops, an older couple sharing a pastry, a man reading a newspaper like it was still 1998. And behind the counter, Amara looked up. She didn't smile right away. Instead, she studied him, the way she studied her subjects before pressing the shutter. "I thought you disappeared," she said. "I don't disappear," he replied. "I relocate," she smiled then. "What can I get you, relocation guy?" "The same mistake as last time," she laughed softly and started preparing his drink. There was an ease between them that surprised them both, like a conversation paused mid-sentence and quietly resumed. He noticed things he hadn't before. The faint scarnaherst. The way she hummed under her breath while working. The way she treated everyone with the same calm attention, whether they tipped or not. When she handed him his coffee, she hesitated. "You can sit," she said, nodding toward a small table by the window. "If you want." He wanted to say no. He didn't. They sat across from each other, rain streaking the glass beside them. Outside, Los Angeles rushed on. Inside, time softened. "So," she said, stirring her own coffee. "What do you do when you're not buying photographs from strangers?" "I design buildings," he answered. Her eyes lit up. "Like real buildings?" "Yes." "Real ones?" "Wow," she said, genuinely impressed. "Do you ever feel like they watch you?" He blinked. "Watch me?" "Buildings," she clarified. "They hold so many lives. So many secrets. Sometimes I think they remember." He studied her carefully. "You think too much," she smiled. "That's what people say right before they start thinking too." They talk not about love, not about pain. They talked about cities, about how LA could feel both limitless and lonely. About photography, architecture, silence. He didn't tell her about the betrayal that had sealed his heart years ago. She didn't tell him about the immigration lawyer who'd kept asking for documents she barely had. They stayed safe. But something unsafe was growing anyway. Weeks passed. The cafe became routine. Sometimes they spoke for hours. Sometimes only minutes. Sometimes just a look and a nod that said, "I see you today." Jansop began to notice changes in himself. He slept better on days he saw her. He designed differently, less sharp, more open. Glass instead of concrete. Light where there used to be walls. One evening, he found himself standing at an art supply store, buying frames. He didn't question it. He brought one to the cafe the next morning. "For you," he said, setting it on the counter. Amara looked confused. "For what?" "For your photographs," he said. "They deserve better frames." Her throat tightened. "No one's ever done that," she said quietly. Then it was overdue. She swallowed and nodded, afraid to say thank you too loudly. That night, she added his name to her list of reasons to stay. One Friday evening, the cafe closed early. Power outage. Neighborhood issue. They stepped outside together, the sky heavy with clouds. "I walk this way," she said, pointing down the street. "So do I," he replied. They walked in silence for a block. Then she spoke. "Do you ever feel like you're living someone else's life?" she asked. He stopped. She stopped too. He looked at her, really looked at her, and for a moment the wall inside him cracked. "Yes," he said. "Every day." She nodded, as if she had expected that answer. "My visa expires soon," she said suddenly. The words hung between them, fragile. "When?" he asked. "A few weeks. Maybe less." Something cold spread through his chest. "You're leaving," he said. Not a question. "I don't know," she replied honestly. "I'm trying not to." He wanted to say something, anything that would anger her there. Instead, he said the only thing he knew how to say. "That's unfortunate." She smiled sadly. "You're bad at comfort. I'm worse at attachment." Her smile faded. "Why?" He hesitated. Then, finally, because the last time I trusted someone, he said, it cost me everything. She didn't push. She just stepped closer and said, some losses teach us where not to bleed again. Others teach us where to heal. Rain began to fall. They stood there, inches apart, the unspoken thick between them. He wanted to kiss her. He didn't. She wanted him to stop holding back. He couldn't. That night, Amara packed her camera bag and stared at her passport. The clock was ticking. And Jansok stood in his apartment, always staring at her photograph, protection, realizing too late control that over his never felt this dangerous. Control over his time. Control over what he allowed himself to feel. But control became fragile the moment Amara said her visa was expiring. He didn't tell her the truth. Not yet. Because the truth was dangerous. The truth was that years ago, long before Los Angeles knew his name, Jansok had loved someone deeply. Too deeply. He had trusted her with everything, his designs, his finances, his future plans. And she had used all of it. She sold his early architectural concepts to a rival firm. Took credit. Took money. Took his belief in people. When the truth came out, he won the legal battle but lost something far more valuable. His ability to open his heart. Since then, he had promised himself one thing. Never let love make you vulnerable again. And now Amara stood quietly in his life, undoing that promise without ever trying. At the cafe, things changed. Not drastically. Not obviously. But enough. Jansok still came. Still listened. Still smiled occasionally. But he spoke less. Left sooner. Built distance brick by brick, the same way he designed buildings precisely, deliberately. Amara noticed. She always noticed. You're somewhere else lately, she said one afternoon, sliding his coffee toward him. I've been busy. You're always busy, she replied. That's not new. He didn't answer. She studied him, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup. Did I do something? No, he said too quickly. She nodded slowly. Okay, but it wasn't okay. That night, she walked home alone under the streetlights, wondering when exactly she had started caring this much and why it suddenly felt like she was losing something she never officially had. The letter came on a Tuesday. Final notice. Her appeal had been denied. She had 10 days. Amara sat on her bed, the envelope trembling in her hands. 10 days to dismantle the life she had built piece by piece. 10 days to pack memories into suitcases and pretend it didn't hurt. Her first instinct was to tell Jansok. Her second instinct stopped her. Because what would she say? I'm leaving. Do you want me to stay? I'm running out of time. Do you love me? He had never given her words to hold on to. So she stayed silent. Jansok sensed a shift immediately. She was quieter now. Distracted. Smiling less. He told himself it was temporary. He told himself it was better this way. Then one evening, as he walked past that cafe after closing hours, he saw her inside alone, sitting at a table, papers spread out in front of her. He stepped in. She looked up, startled. You're early. You're late, he replied. She laughed weakly. Fair, he noticed the envelope. What's that? She hesitated. Then, finally, my deadline. Something inside him sank. When? 10 days. The words hit harder than he expected. That soon, he said. Yes, silence stretched. He could stop this. He had connections. Lawyers. Influence. He could help her fight again. But help meant involvement. Involvement meant attachment. And attachment meant risk. I'm sorry, he said. She looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time, disappointment crossed her face. That's all? She asked softly. He had no answer. Their walk stopped. Their conversation shortened. The air between them grew heavy with everything they refused to say. 3 nights before her flight, Amara stood on the rooftop of her apartment building, city lights glowing below. She lifted her camera and took one final photograph, a skyline that looked endless. She titled it Almost Home. On the morning of her departure, she went to the cafe early. Earlier than usual. She left her apron folded neatly on the counter. She wrote a note. Some people come into our lives not to stay, but to remind us we can still feel. She didn't sign it. She walked out without looking back. Jansok arrived an hour later. The cafe felt wrong immediately. Too quiet. Too empty. He saw the apron. Then the note. His chest tightened painfully. He read it again. And again. Something inside him broke. He ran. At the airport, Amara stood in line, passport in hand, heart heavy but resolved. She had made peace with leaving without closure. Then she heard her name. She turned. Jansok stood there, breathless, hair disheveled, eyes wild. "I didn't tell you everything," he said. She froze. "I was afraid," he continued. "Afraid of trusting you. Afraid of losing control." Tears welled in her eyes. "So you chose silence?" "Yes," he whispered. "And it was a mistake." She swallowed hard. "Why are you here?" "Because if you leave like this," he said, voice breaking, "I'll lose you the same way I lost myself years ago." The boarding call echoed through the terminal. Time was gone. The airport was loud. Rolling suitcases. Boarding announcements. The constant echo of people leaving and arriving, some excited, some relieved, some broken in quiet ways no one noticed. Amara stood frozen, passport still in her hand. Jansok was standing in front of her. Here. Out of breath. Uncontrolled. Nothing like the man who always measured his words, his emotions, his distance. The boarding announcement played again. Final call for flight 728 to Addis Ababa. Her chest tightened. "You came late," she said, her voice steady only because she refused to let it shake. "I came as fast as I could," he replied. "As soon as I understood what I was about to lose." She looked away. "You already lost it." That hurt him more than any accusation could have. "Amara," he said quietly, lowering his voice as people passed around them. "I don't know how to love the way other people do." She closed her eyes briefly. "Then why are you here?" "Because I finally understand something," he said. "Love isn't about knowing how. It's about choosing to try even when you're terrified." She laughed softly, bitterly. That realization came very late. "I know." Silence wrapped around them, thick and painful. "I needed you," she said finally. "Not your money. Not your connections. Just you." His jaw tightened. "I was afraid you'd see how broken I am." She looked at him then, eyes shining with tears. "I already saw it. And I stayed anyway." That was the moment he understood. She had never asked him to be perfect. Only present. Another announcement echoed. "Passengers, please proceed to gate C12 immediately." She stepped back. "This is goodbye," she said. Something inside Jansok panicked. "No," he said, almost pleading. "Please don't decide yet." "Jansok," she whispered. "I don't have a choice." He reached into his coat pocket with trembling hands and pulled out a folded document. "I do," he said. She frowned. "What is that?" "A sponsorship contract," he replied. "For your art. Your photography. A legal work visa. It was approved this morning." Her breath caught. "Your what?" "I spent the entire night with lawyers," he said. "I should have done this weeks ago. Months ago." Her hand shook as she stared at the paper. "You didn't do this for me," she said carefully. "You did this because you were scared to lose me." "Yes," he admitted. "And because losing you would destroy me." She searched his face for hesitation. There was none. "But," she said softly, "papers don't fix hearts." He nodded. "I know." Then, in the middle of the crowded terminal, he did something he had never done before. He let himself be vulnerable. "I love you," he said. The word sounded unfamiliar in his mouth. Heavy. Real. "I don't know how to promise forever. I don't know how to be easy. But I know that life without you feels empty and I don't want to live like that anymore." Tears streamed down her face. People passed by. Time moved. But for them, everything stopped. She stepped forward slowly. "You hurt me," she said. "I know you pushed me away when I needed you most." "I know, and I'm terrified," she whispered, "that one day you'll do it again." He swallowed hard. "That fear will never disappear. But I promise I will never choose silence over you again." She rested her forehead against his chest. Her heartbeat matched his. The boarding gate began to close. She pulled back and looked at the paper again. "This gives me time," she said. "Yes, but staying means trusting you." "Yes, and trusting you means risking my heart." He nodded. "I won't stop you if you choose to leave." She smiled through tears. "That's the first honest thing you've ever said to me." She took a deep breath. Then she tore the boarding pass in half. Gasps echoed nearby. She turned to the gate agent. "I'm not boarding." Jansok's knees nearly gave out. Outside the airport, Los Angeles glowed in the late afternoon sun. They stood together, not touching yet, unsure. "Now what?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "Now we start with truth." She nodded. Slowly, yes. He reached for her hand. She let him. That night, Amara stood in Jansok's apartment, looking at the photograph on the wall, the lonely man in the rain. "That's not you anymore," she said. He looked at her. "Not without you." She lifted her camera and took another photograph. Him. Standing in light. She titled it "Learning."